Well, how in the world can Adam and Eve teach us about social distancing? What does marriage have to do with social distancing, if anything? And what is this phenomenon that we see today so played out in the world as staying away from each other? Learn this and more in just a few seconds. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Give God 90 Radio on Demand. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90. Thank you for spending just a little bit of your most valuable resource, your time, with me for just a little while today as we talk about Adam and Eve and social distancing. Now, I know that sounds kind of funny. Marriage and social distancing don't really go hand in hand, but you know what? Watch what the Bible has to say, because you might be surprised. Before we get into that too deeply, let me remind you, if you're new to Give God 90, please check out GiveGod90.com, and there's a lot of things there that will help guide you through what we do, help teach you who we are, because our only agenda is convincing you to live the way your Creator designed you to live. You can check out our Facebook page, and don't be afraid to go to Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, wherever fine books are sold, and look for either Tradition to Truth, One Man's Search for Honest Answers, or God's Universe, God's Rules, both of them by me, Jerry Mitchell. And here's a really cool thing. You can order them both, and they will come to you, and you can read them, and you can be informed about what the Bible really says. Not what your denomination might say, not what some tradition might say, not even what they say, in air quotes as it has to be. So, what does it really say? Is there contradictions in the Bible? Absolutely not. The contradictions lie with us, which is why we are so confused when it comes to things like Adam and Eve, marriage, social distancing. Yes, marriage is part of it too. Watch what happens as the Bible comes to life right now as you listen to this. When the Almighty, now I'm going to make a drastic assumption here. That is, if you listen to this, you believe you are a created being, okay? That's my assumption. If you're sticking with me this far, you know this is religious, so to speak. Sometimes it's anti-religious, but more on that later. You know that the Almighty created you, and that you should live a certain way. But why do we do this? Did you know that even in the secular world, even in what is known as the unchurched world, there are things that we say, things that we do. If you look at a civil marriage ceremony, okay? What do they say? They talk about people being joined, people being one, people coming together, people, all of these things that combine people. Why is that? The answer lies in Genesis. If you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after his likeness." You know the verse, right? I mean, it's chapter 1 after all. Who hasn't read Genesis chapter 1 all the way through? Gets confusing? Not really. Not if you know how to read it. And I'm not talking about language. I'm talking about being able to pick out things and ask the right questions. God said, "Let us make man in our image." We're going to let him rule over the fish of the sea and the things that fly in the air, over the cattle of the earth, and being all livestock, and over every creeping thing. Okay, so man's going to be, and I'm going to use this term very, very loosely, top of the food chain, so to speak. That is a figure of speech here for me. So as we look at these things and we see man is top of the heap, right? Top of the pile. He's king of the hill, so to speak. Verse 27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he them. Now, if we continue on and we go to chapter 2, we learn how man was created, right? In verse 7, says the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground. Well, that's not exactly accurate, okay? It wasn't dust, because the verse before that says, a mist went up from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. So don't think you're made from dust, guys. All right, it's lower than that. You're made from mud. Let's just face it. You're pond scum. You're mud. All right, it's just that simple. But the Almighty gives us this image here, or I should say Moses gives us this image here, that man is formed out of this mud. God pushes some stuff together and says, this is what I want it to look like, being the ultimate sculptor that he was. and then breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Now the other animals around, he just said, this is what I want this to look like, this is what I want that to look like, this is, a monkey's going to have a tail, a rhinoceros is going to have a horn, but man, he takes a little more time with. And man, he gives something special to. Okay? So now we have man, and we continue reading down, and Adam goes through and he names all of the animals. All right, now I'm skipping a whole lot here because I've got something very important to get to. And it says in verse 21 of chapter 2, the Almighty caused a very deep sleep to fall on Adam. He knocks him out. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh thereof. And the rib which the Lord took from man, he made into woman. And then he brings her back to the man. And of course we all know that Adam said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. He shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. And then something very interesting happens. The very next verse deals with growing up. Okay? Now, I don't know if Adam and Eve at this part were, Adam was a day old and Eve's, 10 minutes old. However things progressed. In verse 24, we read, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave or cling unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh, just like all of the marriage ceremonies tell us, right? Now, all of these marriage ceremonies talk about being one, being united, coming together. And it doesn't matter if it's a secular service, a Christian service, a Jewish service, doesn't matter. I even think that certain other religious marriage ceremonies bring this concept out as well, but I'm not that familiar with most others. I'm not really familiar with how the Buddhists do it and what their actual verbiage is that they use in those type of things. So I'm not sure what words they actually use, but I do know it has to do with uniting, being united, being a new family unit. Why? Why does this happen? Why is it worldwide? Now, I have said before that people are going to follow God's blueprint, for lack of a better word here. They're going to follow his plan, whether they know they're doing it or not, whether they realize it or not. And this is one of the parts where they do. Because it would have been really, really easy for, God made Adam, right? He scooped up some mud and made Adam. It would have been really easy if God just scooped up some more mud and made Eve. Maybe, he would have said, well, I'm going to take her out of a tree, or I'm going to use this branch, or I'm going to, oh, you know what? Let's see. I think that the big toe of a tiger would work to make Adam's soulmate. But he didn't do that. He puts Adam to sleep. He takes a rib, and out of this rib, he grows a woman. Why? What's the purpose in this? Well, I'm not going to go into the entire spectrum of this. I'm going to concentrate on one. And that is bringing people back together. The concept here is that people should be brought back together to be made one. And why is that? What is so drastically important about coming back together to be made one? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Well, if we go back to where Adam, and I'm looking through my notes here. I'm actually reading scripture as I do this, and I'm looking for it where the Almighty says there was no helpmeet found for him. The Almighty knew that he shouldn't be alone, verse 18 says. I'm going to make someone to match him, to be with him, not to be better than him, not to be lower than him, but to complete him. The Almighty, in all of his infinite wisdom, doesn't scoop up another pile of mud or sludge, or doesn't find another animal. He takes part of Adam, and a very special part of Adam, the part that protects his innermost emotional being. He takes a rib, and he makes Eve, giving Eve the key to Adam's emotional well-being. Now it's up to man, as we fall down through the years, right? We come down, everything progresses, we're fruitful, we multiply, and even till today, 6,000 years later, give or take a few hundred years, and today we are still, men and women, searching for each other to make us complete. By taking a piece of Adam, he's saying, now, when I introduce you two back together, Adam, when you wake up, when you see Eve, you know it is going to be her that was taken out of you. You know that it will be her who you need to join with to be complete once again. It's the foundation of a family unit. There is no family unit possible. Now listen to this very carefully. There is no family unit possible in a naturally occurring homosexual relationship. That's because its reproduction would be impossible. You have to have a third party, right? That's the way biology is. It's God's blueprint, His universe, His rules, right? There cannot be in a naturally occurring homosexual relationship any reproduction. There cannot be completeness, because the completeness is not just when two people meet. The completeness is when they raise a family of their own. Okay? That is not always possible, even in a heterosexual relationship. Okay? But there is that bonding there that comes together. There is that bonding there that comes together. And I'm not going to take the time to go into all of those technicality differences, because that is an entirely different teaching. All right? I think I may have taught on this before in an earlier podcast. I don't exactly remember where it is, though. If I remember, I will go find it and put it in the comments section of this. But I don't know if I have time to do that today. Here's the thing. When the Almighty brings us back together and He completes us, when we become united, the common term for that is marriage. But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. A strong relationship where you are drawn to each other binds you together, not just in a civil order. It's not just contractual. It's covenantal. And what do I mean by that? When you come together as a covenant, and I've taught on covenant before plenty of times, you can go back and search what a covenant is through these podcasts if you choose. But a covenantal relationship not only is two people, but it also involves the Creator. And it involves the Creator in such a way that if these two people violate that covenant, there's far more to lose than if they would have violated just a contract. Okay? Far more to lose. And somebody might be thinking, well, that's all great and wonderful, but what happens when one of these relationships ends through death or through divorce or through something? Something happens and causes it to end. Does that mean that whatever it was that made you complete, you can never find? No, it does not. It does not. I know a lot of widows and widowers who have remarried and are extremely happy. They have found something to complete them again. Does that mean that the first person that passed away or the first person that divorced wasn't, I hate the term soulmate because it really isn't that. It's something different. When you have a relationship with somebody that makes you complete, okay, and then they are gone, if it is a separation due to death, what does your wedding vow say? Till death do you part. Why does it say that? Because the separation of death takes that person into a different place. And I've spoken about this numerous times. They can never come back to us, but we can only go to where they are. So that separation, okay, follow me along here, leaves you incomplete once again. Doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, it leaves you incomplete once again. Your desire then to be made complete once more may take, well, for some people it's very quickly, it's several months. For other people it's several years. Some people never find what it takes to make them complete again. I know a very wonderful elderly couple in their 80s who lost each other's spouse, if I said that correctly. They had known each other for years, didn't really ever think they would get together, but one day they just decided to go have a cup of coffee and found out they were compatible. Now, is that the same type of completeness? Are they ever going to reach that total completeness? For them, it's possible at their age. I don't know. Can't answer for that. But isn't it wonderful to know that in their advanced years, they're willing to search out something that makes them whole once again? Think about divorce for a second. I know plenty of divorced people, and I always get questions about divorce. Divorce is one of those things where, how am I going to say this? I'm going to offend somebody, I know, but I'm just going to have to say it this way. Divorce would not be necessary if both married persons were following the instructions of the Creator and living the way they were designed. Typically, and in every situation I know of, including my own many years ago, someone or both were not living the way they were designed, and it led to such a drastic change in the structure of the union that they were unable to continue that way. Now, in ancient times, okay, remember that a man brings something to a covenant relationship, a female brings something to a covenant relationship. Whichever party broke that covenant lost everything. They lost everything because the home belonged to the woman. The land belonged to the man. The home itself, being temporary, belonged to the woman. So oftentimes it would leave the man, even though he still had his property, it would leave him homeless because she would pack her tent and go down the road. And it wasn't as easy as, I'm divorcing you, get out the door. He's had to sit down and write out a very formal, long list of reasons, and a very honest list of reasons, as to what terminated the marriage. Now there is a restriction that if you become divorced, you cannot marry the person you divorced. Okay, it didn't work the first time; it's not going to work the second time either. I've seen that tried and tested, and it's true; it doesn't work. Here's the other thing: once that separation is complete, now these two people are no longer whole. They have to find something that's going to make them complete once again. That can only happen through a relationship. Now, what's this have to do with social distancing? And I get the old joke, well, if you're social distancing after 30 years of marriage, it's okay, right? No. You still want to remain close. The thing is, this doesn't only happen with men and women. But because of the command to be fruitful and multiply, we are, whether we like it or not, family. Now, just like family, some people you like, some people you might not like. It's okay. You don't have to be, besties with everybody. It's not it's not that drastic that somebody who just pushes all the buttons that irritate you, you don't have to sit around a campfire, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It's not necessary. But you still have to love them, right? Here's the thing. Social distancing is not biblical. It's not biblical. The very reason people today are fighting back against this is because there's something in them that says, I have a desire, I've got to be around other people. Now, here's what's really funny. Here's what's really odd. A prisoner in solitary confinement, that's supposed to be there for punishment. There are times when being alone brings you closer to your Creator. If we remember Elijah, he's standing in the cave, okay, and there's an earthquake. I mean, just a loud, thunderous earthquake. He can't hear God. There's the firestorm, right? In all of the fury, he can't hear the Creator. But when things are quiet, when he's all alone, nobody around, even the cobras are leaving him alone. That's when he's able to hear that still small voice. There are times when we are called to be alone, but the majority of the time we are called to be with someone. Here's the really wild thing. We're told not to neglect gathering with other believers, right? But this is going to sound funny. This is going to sound funny. The secular world, the people who don't care about God, maybe they're atheist, maybe they've denounced whatever religion there is. Even these folks have a desire to go out and be around other people. It may be at a bar, it might be at a restaurant, it might be just in a museum, it might be on a crowded beach, or it might be, name a place. Some people I know actually go to an airport and they go to a restaurant at an airport just to be around people. Just to be around people. So here we have these two extremes. We have the secular world who knows that they need to be around people. They don't know why. We have the Christian Jewish world that knows that they need to be around people, but they know why. And then every so often, we have this example where we need to be alone just so we can hear our Creator. We need to leave that hustle and bustle every once in a while just to hear our Creator. But it needs to be on our terms. It needs to be done when we need to do it. There's a large push in the United States to say, okay, we're done with this COVID-19 thing. We realize that all the data now, we've had time to study it. We know that we can come back and we can protect the most vulnerable, and we can come back together again. We can meet in our churches. We can meet in our homes. We can have family gatherings. We can go to restaurants, and the people who go to the bars can go to the bars. We realize that this can be done now. And there's a big push for it. There's a surge for it. And it really needs to be, because even the people who don't realize what they're saying are saying, I need to be among other human beings. We need to be people together, because separated, we're no longer whole. We're not complete. Right now, this little itty bitty virus thing that it's so small, it can infiltrate a cell in your body. That's how small this virus is. That little itty bitty thing has driven people apart. And maybe it's a good thing that it did it for a little while, because now people realize they want to come together. The social distance experiment is a failure, because social distancing only works in a biblical sense when you're trying to get close to the Creator. I know personally someone who was in prison for a long time and was in solitary confinement and was reminded there where he met his Creator once again that that's what it takes to find the Almighty sometimes. You've got to go out, even when it's forced on you. You've got to go hear that little, still, small voice that whispers not in your ear, but in your heart. Once you receive that message, then it's time. Then it's time to go be with your family, to go be with your friends, to go find that social group where you can gather together and you can be people. You can be partially whole, because, and I say partially whole, you're searching for what will make you complete. That's what it's all about. You can't find completeness by yourself. You will never be made whole by yourself. It takes more. It takes seeking, searching through humanity. Some people do a lot of searching through humanity, and they never find that one person. And that's just kind of sad. When you look and you look and you look and you search and you find, and you can't find that one person that makes you whole. I know people who searched for years and years, and they think they found the one person that makes them complete. But it wasn't them. And they get so upset, they just stop looking. That is sad. I understand it. I get it. But it's sad. Those are the people who need to be around people the most, because they're still searching. They're still hunting. They're still looking. They're still trying to put the pieces together that makes them complete. This whole thing of social distancing is so out of touch. We don't understand it. We can't see it. The only way we're going to understand it is when we can come back together and look back at this failed experiment and say it didn't work. People are not made to be alone. God said it is not good for man to be alone. He wasn't just talking about Eve. He was talking about their children. And when their children looked around, they saw their parents, their brothers and sisters, their nieces, their nephews, the thousands that were basically reproduced from Adam and Eve coming together. Don't neglect being together. Don't stop having that desire to be among your family, your friends. It's necessary. It's what makes us whole. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been a blessing for you. Until next time, I offer you many, many blessings. Stay safe out there, folks. Stay safe. There's a lot of crazy going on in the world today. Don't get caught up in it.